Let's give Kristen and Ben another round of applause. Thanks so much, Egan and Hippen. It's fitting to begin tonight with music by a great local band as we celebrate so much of the beauty that we have to offer here in the Driftless. And so, as a board member of SILT, I'd like to thank Egan and Hippen for playing, and we have many other people to thank for being here tonight, including our sponsors, Decorah Bank and Trust, Pulpit Rock, and the Oneota Co-op. I also have to give a shout out to Driftless Hills Farm for the pork. If you haven't got back there and gotten some of those snacks yet, you should do that before the night ends. Driftless Hills provided the pork, and Paul Dernberger, our board member in the back over here, cooked it for us. Yeah. So I'm Kayla Koether. I'm a board member of SILT, and I just want to welcome everyone tonight and thank you for being here as we talk about something that's so crucial to the future of our rural communities, which is helping beginning farmers find access to land and making sure that we protect land for future generations to grow healthy food. And we can do that by continuing a conservation legacy and maintaining all the beauty of the natural world around us. And that's a lot to celebrate. We are well underway with this journey as SILT, and our community has brought so much inspiration to the rest of the state. And so it's really fitting that after a few years on this journey, we can be here together in Decorah tonight to celebrate that. And I'm coming to this tonight with a lot of gratitude, and so I'd like to ask us to start off, if you would turn to your neighbor and say something that you're grateful for about our landscape and our community here in Northeast Iowa. Well, it was pretty loud in here for a second there. I'm hearing lots of gratitude. All right, it sounds like everybody is grateful for a lot of things. And I think it's really fitting that we come to this with a spirit of gratefulness and joy for what we have here, and especially what we have here in the Driftless, because we truly have such a beautiful landscape and a community that's so dedicated to one another and dedicated to thinking forward to what this community will be in the future and making sure that we steward that. To share my gratitude, I have to tell you that I came to the Board of SILT after it was founded. And many of you know that I grew up on a farm here in Northeast Iowa, and I too want to be part of the generation of beginning farmers that starts on property someday. And so it's so meaningful to me, and I'm so grateful that people across the state of Iowa had the forethought and the foresight to see, here's the gap. People need access to land, and the way the current system is working does not provide that. And instead of just getting down and being distraught, they decided that there was a mechanism and something that they could really do to address that. And they took that challenge head on. And we have seen people be able to step into that challenge and give what they have to make it possible for people. So with that, I would like to introduce Lyle Luzum, who is a community member extraordinaire, a board member of SILT, and who donated his farm to SILT, and now is hosting farmers at the Driftless Hills Farm. So take it away, Lyle.
Well, speaking of grateful, I guess it's hard to not be grateful for this turnout. It's amazing to feel the support that we've had after donating our farm. You give what you can, and we had a farm. And I know it sounds a little odd, but you can wish for things or you can do something about it. And for most people, if you want good food, what you can do is you can buy it from the people who produce it. And so you can support that type of thing. So you support what you wish for. And in our particular case, it solved the problem of what do we do with the farm and its long conservation legacy. And we all know that if we just sold it, it would just turn into another corn and soybean field, and all the conservation would be ripped out, and the legacy of the farm would disappear. So we didn't want that to happen. And back in 2005, I think it is, as Ann and I were talking about when the Food and Farm Coalition first got started in Northeast Iowa. It was the first organization to try and address the issue of local foods. And I got involved in it pretty quickly after it started. And I decided, this is interesting. I had grown up on the farm all my life, and we were living out in Illinois for a while. And then in 1978, we came back, and I farmed for 10 years, then got into IT, and I was the IT director at Northeast Iowa Community College for 20-some years. When I retired, I decided to go back and pick up the farm again, because I had kind of put it in hiatus, because I really didn't feel comfortable moving down the path that I saw agriculture going. So, we just kind of held on, and I earned money elsewhere. But once I retired, I picked it back up and certified organic and sold lamb into the local market. And that is after we had been involved in the Food and Farm Coalition and its follow-up, which was supported by the Kellogg Foundation, the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative. So there's a fairly long history, if you count 15 years as long, of local food support in this area. And that's one of the reasons it seemed feasible for us to look at an alternative to just renting or selling to the highest bidder or whatever with the options. And fortunately, along came Suzan Erem to a annual meeting of the Oneota Food Co-op, and she was talking about this new land trust called SILT, Sustainable Iowa Land Trust. And it looked like a possible solution because it provided a different solution that didn't exist before. And that solution was to protect land for the production of good, healthy food in a non-chemical way, and also to protect the conservation aspects of the farm. So there's many different ways to protect land, but there's only SILT that is dedicated to providing access to that land at an affordable price for people producing sustainably produced food. And that's what SILT is about. And it's a unique organization. There may be one other one in the country that we know that has a similar mission, but it's the only one of this type. Well, it's the only one here, obviously. And so it truly is a unique thing. When we started talking about that was like 6 months into the formation of SILT. So it wasn't an awful lot of experience there, but nonetheless, it looked like it had a solution. And so over a period of 2 years, we went back and forth of how this could work for us. So in 2017, we decided, okay, that is the time to pull the trigger. So on June 2nd of 2017, we donated the farm. And of course, what we were hoping for is that it would become another family's farm and would be used to produce the food that we hoped would be produced and able to be accessible. So that's what we could do. And what you can do if you don't have a farm, you can eat, first of all, and you can support the people who are producing that type of food. And you might recognize that sometimes that's more expensive, but the reason is because it's not mass produced and the corners are not cut. So sometimes you have to say, well, there's a value in that, because oftentimes our mass-produced stuff comes with a cost that we don't recognize. The externalized costs, and we pretend they don't exist, but they're very, very real in an environmental standpoint and everything else. In society, our rural areas have been depopulated, and it's because there's nothing there to support them anymore. Rural communities depended on farmers, and when the farmers disappear and you just have a few, you lose that communities. So this is the way to also, we hope, start, at least do our little part in helping to keep that aspect together. So what our hope was that it would be useful for somebody and that it would maintain the legacies that we had tried so hard through our generations to produce. And we are happy that's happened in our particular case, and there's other, we hope others follow the lead. You know, for us, this is a little bit like jumping off the bridge and hoping the bungee cord was strong. It turns out the bungee cord worked, and we got caught by our heels, and we didn't die. And so we're very happy with the result. Of course, you know, we're early in this, but this is a solution we hope for perpetuity, because the land trust has a responsibility in perpetuity, and with that comes, well, it's a big responsibility, and it doesn't just happen, and it happens with money, because it costs to acquire the rights to land and to maintain those over a long period of time. And even if, you know, it's not sexy to have staff that you have to pay, but nonetheless, you cannot do these things without the foundational funding that you need. And, you know, that's one thing we're about. You know, I'm on the board now, and it's not really comfortable for me to just go to ask people for money. But it's something we have to do, and I'm glad you're here. And I hope you find that your part in this is twofold. First of all, you want to eat and support the people who are doing these things. But secondly, you give what you can to support this if it's something that meets your desires. So that's basically our story. We're happy that this happened. And it wouldn't have happened 4 years ago without SILT. Yeah.
I have two questions. One is, you talked about the legacy of the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Address that a little bit.
Well,
the other thing, second part, how does this work? Do you rent the farm to people, or do they actually live on it?
yeah, okay.
How does that work?
Good questions. The legacy of the farm, it's our heritage farm. The Luzums moved to this farm in 1873. So my grandfather came as a little boy. He farmed it. My father farmed it. I farmed it. And our daughter was the next generation. And they had jobs, and, you know, were not able to do the farming. So at some point, it became a question of, now what do we do with this? We could just give it to Steph, and then she'd have the problem. What does she do with it? So,
But I meant, was there
the legacy. Yeah, it was the
farming practice?
right. My dad was one of the early conservation farmers in Wichita County. Some of the oldest, in fact, I think perhaps the oldest terraces still existing were put in place by my dad in 1943. About a mile of terraces that he put in with a 2-bottom plow. And those have existed for all that time, and that is the basis for the conservation. So yeah, it's a long conservation legacy. And of course, in those days, what we now call organic farming was normal farming. That was conventional. And then that switched in the 80s, and 70s and 80s. And that's when I kind of hung it up and said, well, I'll just hang on here. And then after that, since 2009 or something like that, it's been certified organic on my part. So those are the legacies that we wanted to protect from a physical standpoint. The process by which it works is that SILT now is the owner of the farm. They have the deed. We don't own the farm anymore. And SILT's responsibility is to seek out the farmers, to recruit farmers who would fit the land, and SILT works with long-term leases. So there's a preliminary probationary lease period, and if it works out for both parties, then the extended or long-term lease is extended. In Iowa, that is a maximum of 20 years by law, but it can be re-upped. Yeah, and it's also inheritable. So it can be a family farm into generations. The difference is that because we donated the land, there is never going to be a need to repurchase that. So what we did was we took the cost of the land out of the equation, so it can be rented at a rate that is less than what would normally be the case to pay off ridiculously expensive land prices when you're competing with people who are so highly leveraged and have thousands of acres to write off high costs on. So it's the idea that, we pretend we own the land, but we actually just use it for our lifetime. And then it passes on to somebody else. We either cash out and make a bundle and go and live high, or we pass it on to the next generation. And in the end, if we do that, we just lived on the land. So this is really the same thing, and because in essence, what has happened is that we neither bought nor sold the land in the end. Because net-wise, we just lived on the land and passed it on. And what passed on had gone only to our daughter. And our daughters agreed with this, and we appreciate that. And we can't. she's back there behind the bar, Heidi. but okay, so we donated the farm, but what she did was she donated her inheritance. So.
Okay, well, Lyle told us about the farm part of Farm to Fork, but I want to get Michael Klemish up here to tell us about the fork part of Farm to Fork, because he has been a customer of Andy and Betsy Boone that has eaten the pork from what was formerly the Luzum farm and now the Boone's operation. And so, Andy, if you want to come, or Michael, if you want to come up here and talk a little bit about that experience. He's been around the world, worked in industry, worked in education, and still on 4 continents?
Yeah.
On 4 continents, and still says that this is the best pork he's ever tasted.
She said everything I need to say. The thing is, I'm going to be a hard act to follow up on what Lyle said. It's kind of like I'm the chicken for breakfast. I donated the egg. I'm involved, but he's the bacon, and he was committed. My food interests go back a long way. And in the last millennium, when I was much younger, we always had a garden, and I've always had a garden along the way, and I've always tried to search out the best possible way to eat. And I thought I did pretty good along the way, but probably 25 years ago, I discovered the Weston Price Foundation. Does anybody here know about the Weston Price Foundation? Yes? Some. Well, if you go online, you can just do Weston Price Foundation, and you will find out about them, because they were the reason I really truly got interested in eating the best way I possibly could. Some of you might be associated with paleo. Yes? No? Well, Weston Price is a little bit more all-encompassing, but their approach is the best food for personal health and the best way to prepare it. So as time went on, I tried to do the best I could to improve my own nutrition. And as I started to read the Weston Price Foundation, it became obvious to me. They have a quarterly journal, by the way, and it's excellent. That there were things out there in the marketplace that I really shouldn't be partaking of. So over time, I looked around locally, and if you are looking for the best food, it is possible to find that in many ways locally. Last year, about this time, I ran into Lyle down at the farm market, and they had a table down there, and he told me that his farm was going into this program. And I thought, well, I have to wait and see that it gets operational, and then I want to be a customer. And so when this spring's farm market started, And these people were there selling their product. I started buying it. And I visit the farm market virtually every Saturday that I'm in residence, so to speak. And I've been buying my way through the different cuts of the meat sold by the SILT farm. Did I make another joke? No, I don't think so. Maybe. And I have just been overwhelmingly pleased with the quality of the product. I've cooked it on the stove, I've cooked it on the grill. The flavor is excellent. It's juicy. It's tender, very tender. And for all practical purposes, you know, I haven't bought commercial corporate meat for something like 20 or 30 years. If it's got a commercial corporate label on it, it doesn't end up on my table. So I encourage you in all of the ways that you are able to support this program and these people and their production, and make sure that we in Winnebago County and in Iowa, which only produces 10% of its own food, amazing, sad statistic, that you support these producers and that we continue to improve our quality of life locally. And thank you for your attention.
All right. Before we have our next speaker speak, we're going to draw a couple of door prizes. So Aldo, do you want to come help me? Do you want to pull the names? We've got a hat, a silk hat. Yeah. Did everybody fill out a little white? This is the honor system, guys. Duncan McLean. You didn't tell me. No, where's Duncan? Duncan McLean. Your kid. No. Okay, so we've heard personal experiences on both sides of what SILT really means for our community. But when we kind of scale up and look at this at a systems level for what it could mean across our landscape here in not only Northeast Iowa, but across the state of Iowa, it takes a broader perspective. And there's no one in our community more suited to that type of broad perspective than Paul Johnson, been the head of the NRCS, director of the DNR here in Iowa. And Paul's one of our first SILT advisors that really helped get this concept off the ground and figure out what it would mean across the state. So I'd like to introduce Paul. How would we like to do this? Should reach.
Thank you, Kayla. It's very good to be here. That pork was good, wasn't it? Yeah. So, about 30 years ago, Dave Topol, who was the dean at College of Agriculture at Iowa State, came to me and said, "Paul, you're going to really love this pork. There's no fat in it," he says. And then they started this thing about the other white meat. What were they thinking? So we went to Greece a few years back, and all the good food that we had there, what I liked the best were the pork. And it was just delicious. And I only realized about halfway through our stay there that it was delicious because it was grown on the farms and it had some fat in it. Now, I know it's not politically correct to say fat makes really good flavor, but have you tried a CAFO piece of pork lately? I mean, well, if I want the other white meat, I'll eat the other white meat, but not. So the pork was really good. I was asked to say a few words and somehow bring things together, but as usual, my mind goes in many different directions. But I thought I'd start by giving us a little perspective on where we are today and where we've come from. And I do that thinking that agriculture, they say, began about 12,000 years ago. That's about 600 generations ago. And up until about 45 years ago, when we started farming, it was pretty much the same. Family farms, diversified farms, farms that were not single function, but had many functions. Our farm, we had dairy, and we had sheep, and we had beef cattle. We had Christmas trees. We had oats and corn and soybeans. But what we had the most when people said, "What do you grow on your farm?" We grew kids. And now grandkids. And is there any better reason for farming than to start another generation and to see what farm kids can do and where they can go? But anyway, if you look at it, for the first 594 generations, we farmed in pretty much the same way. The last 45 years, think of what's happened. We've taken animals from the land and put them in factories. We've taken people from animals. They're factory workers now. Cows don't have names anymore. And we're about to take people from land as well. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, to see how few people are actually doing the farming right now. And I've thought about this a lot and wondered, where in the world are we going? I just wish I had another 30 years, because there's going to be some good things happening, and there are, starting here tonight. If you look at agriculture, it really does. We've talked about sustainable agriculture, and I've worked very hard on that. But the more I think about it, the more we need to think in terms of multifunctional agriculture. Agriculture is not just corn and soybeans. And yet, in Iowa today, out of our 36 million acres, 26 million are in 2 crops. And not only that, but there are no weeds in them anymore even. There's 2 species. There's soybeans and there's corn on 26 million acres. What used to be 26 million acres of tall grass prairie, 4 million acres of wetlands, 7 million acres of woods, today is 2 crops. And it's scary to me to see where we're going and what we can do about it. On the other hand, we have little things started. We have Practical Farmers of Iowa, 3,000 members now. I like to call them the impractical farmers of Iowa. But I think that's very important. We have a number of other groups that are doing a lot of good things in Iowa today. And now we have SILT. And I was asked to put things together somehow. And if you have ever taken any soils courses or tried to study soils, and I've done a lot of that in my life, soils are made up of 3 different parts: sands, silts, and clays. And we all know that sands they can't do much on their own. And clays, if you garden, you don't want just clays, do you? What you want is that thing in the middle that binds us all, and that's silt. Guess what? I could quit right now. You know what silt is? it binds us all together. And we're here today to think about SILT. And as I look on the program and the land trust and how it's gotten started, people like the Luzums and others, this will be the bridge that will keep us going. And we won't just be factory farms in the future with relatively few people serving only two functions, corn and soybeans. We will have farmers and farms that still farm for water, good water. Nobody in Iowa can farm without farming water. Every acre in Iowa on the average, gets about 32 inches of precipitation. And if you farm well, it will process that water, it will filter it, it will buffer it, it will partition it. And if you don't, we're in real trouble. And the average corn and soybean farmer today looks upon water as a problem, something that we've got to, it's the idea of conservation being a limit on our freedoms rather than conservation being a positive act, something we could really get excited about. And so it also functions of agriculture is, of course, good food and people food. We keep saying we feed the world, but I don't think I need to tell you what we really feed. Big SUVs and things like that. But feeding people is extremely important, and I'm really excited about being in Decorah, where 45 years ago we had Ole's Swap Shop, and that's where our food co-op was. You go in and you could get beans out of a bin, or you could get rice out of a bin. You'd bring it home and soak it in water to get the bugs out of it. Remember those days? And now look at it today. Over 5,000 members in our food co-op here. It's just amazing. And an awful lot of the food is grown locally. And so that's certainly another function. Biodiversity, carbon sequestration, not supposed to use that word anymore. Farm Bureau says we shouldn't use carbon sequestration, or we shouldn't use global climate. But yes, we should. And if you farm well, you will be putting carbon back into the soil rather than taking it out like we have done. Another function is biodiversity and wildness. And I really believe in wild farmers. No farm should be sterile with just one or two crops. Every farm should have a place on it for something wild as well. And I can't imagine a farm that doesn't cultivate some wildness. And wildness is not just a wilderness area. We can grow wildness. All we have to do is understand wild species and provide the habitat for them. So back to SILT. We can't be good at producing anything off the land if we don't have that central part of what makes up soil. And soil is sands, silts, and clays. And without SILT and without that organization that we're talking about tonight, we will not have a healthy agriculture. We will not be able to grow our food and a place for our wild things. So I urge you all to think about SILT, and that you can't have good, healthy soil and grow good crops without SILT. So it's good to have you.
Thanks, Paul. I think we've got a few more door prizes. I'm not sure where that hat went. All right, Susan's got the hat. Susan, you have the bag. Where's the hat? No, there's another hat. That's the hat. Look, do you want to draw?
No, somebody else draw. Otherwise it'd be rigged.
Oh, right. We don't want to have a rigged election here. We already know that we don't. Toby Kane.
Toby, where are you? Still selling tickets. Toby? Where'd she go?
She might be on the other side getting a beer.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Thanks for our new t-shirt.
New t-shirt. Let's see it.
A little irreverent. Yes.
Silt happens. All right.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yep. Ross. There we go. That's all we're giving away for the time being. So I really like the term wild farmer. I think that would be great on a resume. I hope there are a couple people in here tonight that are going to add it to theirs. So next we're going to hear from Andy, and he's going to tell us about his experience on Driftless Hills Farm. So let's give him a warm welcome and hear how it's been going.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. My wife would have been here, and she's an assistant midwife and she's on a birth, so I was planning on her talking tonight. So sorry about that. We are still a little in shock of the farm we're on. It's a dream property, and we have to thank the Luzum family and SILT. Every morning I'm out doing chores, I still can't believe we're on that farm, honestly. It's incredible, and the opportunities we have to grow are out of our reach still. So we have a lot of dreams with the property, and we owe it all to SILT and the Luzum family. Without their generous support, we were on a small 5-acre homestead, and I was working as a produce manager, and we were in this place where we could never raise enough animals to earn enough money. We couldn't earn enough money to buy land, and we were kind of in this place where we said, I think we need to just raise food for our own family and not try to sell food. And my wife saw an advertisement for SILT through the, I think, Practical Farmers of Iowa, and she said, we really should apply for this, and I thought she was crazy. And we started going through the process of applying, and here we are a year later or so, and yeah, we are just so grateful and thrilled for the support of people that have allowed someone like me and my family to be on a beautiful farm and to try to make a living farming. So, thank you.
Okay, well, there's a couple more people I want to introduce to everyone tonight. So first is Joe Klingelhutz, who's the farm specialist at SILT, and he can tell you a little bit more about what he does, because for those of you who are landowners, he might be able to help you with some of your conservation planning. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Joseph Klingelhutz. I'm the SILT farm specialist. I work out of West Branch, Iowa, just east of Iowa City, and I'm here to talk to you guys about growing food on the Iowa landscape, something that we really need to discuss after hearing Paul Johnson. It seems more apparent than ever. And as I look around, I think I might be one of the youngest people in this room here. So I'm worried about the future, and I'm worried about our local food system and how we're going to be able to grow food for my generation and generations to come. So I'm hired on an NRCS grant to go and walk properties all across Iowa and to do basic reporting on the landscape and to look at the soils, to look at the topography, and to have the discussion about growing different types of food, such as nuts and fruits and vegetables, pastured meats, mushrooms, and honey, and a lot of different things can grow here in Iowa, but we really gotta have the discussion and protect the land to do it. So if you have land, or if you know someone who has land and thinking about different things to do with it, I have a brochure. Susan's holding it up over there, has my information in it, and it's a free consultation, a free land walk, and a free report that you will get about growing food and what your land is trying to tell you by looking at the soils, by looking at the topography, and, let's talk. So thank you guys, and come ask me questions after this. Thank you.
All right, and last but certainly not least, I want to have Suzan Erem come up and talk to you all. Incredible founder and now executive director of SILT, who saw the gaps that were needed to help people access land and brought this into fruition with so many people at her side. And I think we're all just so grateful for that. So we want to hear more about her inspiration and vision and how we're going to move this organization forward with your help.
I'm not going to talk too long because I have a job to do. But I do want to say that when I first started this, I hadn't been in Iowa for 20 years. I was dragged out of the state by an Iowan, and it took me that long to get back. And I missed a lot of the good stuff. In the late 80s, Gene Lloyd Jones was in the Senate, and I think Paul and Ralph were probably getting there, or they were there already, and I was just a student, and I was reading about these folks in the paper, and they were fighting the family farm fight, and I wasn't sure what that was because I was from out east. Our first assignment in my journalism class was to write about an exploding elevator, and I was clueless about why an elevator would explode. This was pre-9/11, and but when I came back and my husband Paul Durenberger and I started looking around and seeing the problems, I had been a union organizer, and it was in my blood by then that if there's something wrong, you have to do something about it, no matter how little and how minor. But after a lot of research, I started calling the people who had been doing all this work all those years. And one of them, everybody kept saying, you need to call Paul Johnson up in Decorah. And I hadn't heard of Paul Johnson. Pretty ordinary name when you think about it, right? I mean, Gene Lloyd Jones, the Lloyd in that is from the big Lloyd, the architect guy, right? Denise O'Brien, yeah, I can remember that one. Kirschman, who could forget Kirschman? I couldn't even spell it. But Paul Johnson. But the minute I spoke to him, I knew I had a treasure trove of wisdom. And then people said, when you create the list of people involved with SILT, you need to put Paul Johnson on there. And I thought, dang, no matter how special he is. Oh, by the way, I have a reputation at SILT for not knowing how to Google people. So I said, gee, that's a great name. How are they going to know which Paul Johnson, right? There's got to be a lot of Paul Johnsons out there. Well, I put him on the list because there was room anyway, right? And wherever that 4-page brochure went, even to the Deputy Secretary of Ag, when I gave it to him, I'd walk up to anybody. I gave it to him at the Farmers Union Convention. They all flipped to the back to see those names. They go, oh, you have Paul Johnson. I'm like, who knew? I soon learned that was the best name on the whole list, right? And then Kayla. We get information that just kind of falls out of the sky to us down there in West Branch. It's a big state. I can't cover it all, but Kayla applied for a job. We weren't even paying much. Wasn't that many hours. It was the first job we'd have. And she applies, and she's like 20-something. And she never run a nonprofit, but dang, was that letter passionate? It just jumped right off of the page. And it was eloquent, and I thought, well, she didn't graduate from Iowa State, right, Joe? No, just kidding. And I just had to call her and say, who are you? And I can't hire you. I don't think I can hire you, but oh my God. And she said, I just wanted to get on your radar. And of course, we recruited her for the board as soon as I could. Who knew what a troublemaker she would be? Yes. All right. And Lyle, he walks up to me at the Oneota Food Co-op meeting. Thank goodness for Dave Lester. And he says, I think I want to give him my farm. Well, I'd been doing this for about 4 months by then, and I realized that usually didn't mean what I'd hoped it would mean. It really didn't. It either meant he was going to go home and his family was going to talk sense to him, or his farm was a half acre behind his mansion, right? So I waited a couple of days. I held my breath. I called him back. I said, so what do you think? He says, my daughter's entirely behind it. Everybody's on board. Oh, okay, great. And then I said, and how big exactly is your farm? And he said, 170 acres. I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, this is the real deal. So you guys have a lot of magic up here. You know that already. If it weren't for the weather, you'd get invaded by all kinds of criminal elements like New Yorkers, but, like me. But thankfully, it's cold enough here, and you got to drive in that snow on the hills. You got to have skill to live in Decorah. That keeps, some elements like me out of here. So that's my job today, is to tell you how special you are, but not only how special you are, but how you impact the rest of the state. I know it can be hard to believe sometimes when you don't get out much. And you all have no reason to get out, so I understand that. But not like living in West Branch, where I get out every chance I can. All right? And the stories that we can tell from here of the young people. I mean, I come up here just to get fed, just to get my soul fed from the young farmers like Hannah Breckbill, who's here, and by Kayla and others. And Stefan, who tried growing food for a little space, right? He's busy with Seed Savers right now. And other really good young people, because they love SILT. They get us, and they get what we're trying to do, and they're doing all the right stuff to get land. But they're never going to get it. They're never going to get that land, all right? Unless they were born rich, or they're just lucky. And there's few and far between that can do what Hannah did, right? She's like a very special story with some very special people involved. Well, why should it be so darn lucky? Why does it have to be a crapshoot? Why can't people just go online and find a farm that they can afford and go farm it, and be able to farm it based on the fact that they're good farmers? They did everything right. They learned how to farm, they do the 15-hour days, they do the heat, and now they should be able to get land that they can trust, that will stay in their lives for the rest of their lives and their kids' lives. It seems like a no-brainer to me. So we started SILT, and all these great names I threw out to you, and a bunch of others. Bill Stowe, may you rest in peace, one of my heroes. And a lot of other great people came together in Perry, Iowa, paid their own way. Nobody believed it. Wow, they paid their own way. So then I knew they were serious, right? And we hammered out the rest of what we had as SILT. But here's what we didn't have. We didn't have one rich person in the room, not one. They were farmers, people like me who'd worked 70-hour weeks as a union organizer for the poorest, most miserable union on earth. We called it SEIU instead of SEIU. And we had retired anthropologists, not retired nuclear scientists. They actually have a pension. So, and we had retired sociologists, same problem, right? But we knew we had the right idea. And we knew if we put it out there, people would come. And so it was a huge leap of faith. I'm not a religious person. This was the most faithful I have ever been, because I love this state. I loved it when I got torn away from it, and I loved it by the time I came back, and I still love it, and I refuse to let bad people from other places steal it from us. All right? But that means the good people have to stand up and do something. So Lyle gave us his farm. Joe Driscoll gave us his farm in the Les Hills, 53 acres, 15 minutes from Omaha. He could have retired. He could have retired on that sale, and he gave it to us. And anyway, we got 40 acres in southern Iowa. We have 130 acres conservation easement in southeast Iowa that is in prairie and trees right now. Beautiful prairie, beautiful trees. But the man said, I already have a conservation easement for some land in Tennessee. I like your vision. I like the idea of young people out there growing food for the community. As long as you take care of my soil, I'll let you do that. And I said, well, our soil's what matters here. It's where the food grows. And he put an easement. He was our very first easement, 89 years old, put an easement on 130 acres of prairie and trees. And when we're ready with the right farmer, he's ready to take it out of CRP and put somebody on there and give him a chance. 25 minutes from Iowa City. It's huge. We have 2 easements in northwest Iowa. They're in organic corn and bean, as they should be. Because you know what? If you try to grow raspberries in Calhoun County, they're going to look pretty rotten by the time you get to Sioux City. So you got to grow organic corn and beans. But they're not allowed to grow them on slopes. I don't care how organic it is. If it's on a slope, the soil's still going to Mississippi. So we don't let that happen. So we come to folks like you because of maybe something you can't give. Maybe you can't give us land, and maybe you can't give us a conservation easement, which is not giving us your land, but it's limiting the use of it. But maybe you can help us pay the lawyers and the appraisers and the mileage to get up here, because it's a ways up here, if you noticed, and the people who do the work, and the training we gave Joe so he could talk with some authority when he walks around on land. And maybe you could help us do that transaction every time somebody says, I'd like to give you a farm. Because when Lyle walked up to me and said, I want to give you my farm, all could think about is the $5,000 it was going to cost us. A $1.1 million farm, and I had to worry about the $5,000 to pay to get it. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. But you know what? When you're just a bunch of regular folk and you're throwing in your pennies and dimes as you go along, that's what you got to worry about. And we're just trying to bootstrap something. Well, we weren't started with state money or federal money or anything. We were started just with 25 people in a room who raised $10,000 that weekend, and that was big for us. You know, that's what you got to do. It's good old-fashioned grassroots organizing. So today I'm going to ask you to make some pledges, and we're going to start high. Because we have people in this room, I suspect, who are thinking about protecting their land with silt. We don't have 40 years of experience. We don't have $50 million in the bank. We don't even have a bunch of staff. It's me, Joe, and a half-time person in Des Moines works out of her house. But dang, we got passion, and we got vision, and we got a proven model, and we got something people are responding to, so we ask you to trust us and make an investment in silt, because for $5,000 we could get $1 million farm, which I think is pretty cool. You can't do that on Wall Street. So there, Mr. Trump, you can't do that on Wall Street. So we ask you today, is there anybody in the room, and we're handing around some cards, and some of our young people are going to collect them. We won't yell out your name or the amount if you don't want us to, but we have to come out of here with some commitment from Decorah. Lyle's farm costs money to run. Andy's just so high maintenance. You know, we're up here all the time. No, he's like there's the best family could ever gotten there. But it does cost money. So we're going to ask you now. We're looking for people to become members as monthly members. And I know Iowa Public Radio has kind of ruined it for everybody, but really, that's the most solid money we can count on. And so we're looking for anybody who can pledge $100 a month. That's $1,200 for the year. I can pledge $100 a month tonight. By the way, you get to like renege on it tomorrow, but it makes a really good story tonight. So can anybody do that? Anybody? $100 a month? Oh, Pater did. You've never been to an auction, have you? So I understand it's an election year. Every year's an election year these days. I understand there's other commitments. But you heard Andy, you heard Kayla, you heard Joe. You understand. Lyle's on our board. We know what we're doing, partly because of Lyle. Did you guys ever see his spreadsheets? If they had arms and legs, we'd have like 5 more staff. They're unbelievable, right? So we need to know, is anybody here willing to commit $100 a month? Just for 1 year? Yes, thank you. And who's over here? Who are you pointing at? You're pointing at somebody else. That's cheating. Oh, your wife. Thank you. We have 2. We have 2. Joe, can you make sure we connect with those 2 folks? Thank you. The woman in the yellow and this woman who got roped into it by her husband. Thank you so much. Can anybody help with $75 a month? So you guys all have it. The rest of it's easy, right? Come on. $75 a month, anybody. This isn't an auction. I'm not going to like do strip poker or anything. We just need to know that Decorah is serious about the farms we're going to acquire here. Because if we're going to acquire donated land in Iowa, it's going to be here. You guys have the politics. You have the sense of common good. You understand that if you treat land as a commodity, that's what you get. But if you treat it as a common good, you have a real community. You get that. You got it with Hannah Breckbill. I know you get it. So can anybody help us with $75 a month? That's like, how many nitros at the coffee shop? Is that like 5? Right? Oh wait, how many toppling Goliaths? That's 1, right? I heard that they have one really expensive one. Come on, you can give up 1 beer a month? The lady in the gold. Nope, she's never been to an auction either. She doesn't understand. Nobody. Okay, guys, come on, don't make me beg. 50? That's $600 a year. Can somebody help with 50? Jesus, Kayla, I did better raising you money in Iowa City, that's for sure. You guys are putting yourselves to shame. Thank you. 50? Thank you very much. Okay, we have 50. Anybody else? Wow. Okay, guys. The only time this went worse was at Greg Brown, because they all came to see Greg Brown. So you actually don't believe in what we're doing? Are there any questions about what we're doing? Do you think we're doing any harm? We hurting people? Was it that crack about New Yorkers moving to Decorah? You guys still recovering from that? Okay, $25 a month, please. Even our working people do. What'd you say? Have you considered stand-up? Have I considered stand-up? If I got a nickel for every joke, I'd be making more than I am tonight. $25 a month, please. Membership, thank you. We got one back there, thank you. And another one, thank you very much. Anybody else? Come on, we're on a roll. Geez, we'll give you a t-shirt. Come on, $25 a month. Okay, no t-shirt. Yes, we got another one, thank you. All right, guys. Everyone else, I want you to put something on the card, please. A one-time donation, all right? Make it something we can remember. Michael sent us something we could remember. That's why we put him up at the mic. He not only supports the Boones because they grow great food, but he supports SILT because he understands the only way the Boones are there is because of us. And I know it sounds really self-aggrandizing and all that stuff, but I got to do it. I have to do it. I'm in that position. Nobody else will get up here and ask you for money, so I have to do it. And it really stinks because I don't like doing it. I do stand up before I ask for money. But we're going to do a 50-50 raffle. We're going to do the last drawing, which is a beautiful basket that Oneota Food Co-op made for us. I am supposed to tell you that we have the t-shirts for sale. We have beautiful greeting cards that were designed. The artwork is designed by an artist in New York who loves what we do. And there's all kinds of beautiful cards over there. There's a couple books and what else? And hats and t-shirts and bags, right? So you came here tonight. You had great food, local food. You are not going to have in 20 years if you're here because whoever grew the food will have to move an hour away from where our farmers are now. Do you understand that? These farmers will sell their land to developers, and the next farmer, the next generation, will have to move an hour out to afford the land. And eventually it becomes a really stupid business proposition to travel 3 hours to sell you a tomato, okay? So that's this. This is your food security in Decorah. If you love it, I'm asking you to do the one thing nobody ever thinks about. Nobody does. That's why we're doing this. Invest in protecting your land so that 30, 50 years from now, you have pockets of small farms surrounding your community, and maybe your community jumps over them, but they're all growing food for your community. No Chinese tariffs matter. No nuclear wars matter. You're there. You get your food right there, okay? And it's your food security, your community strength, your jobs, your young people. This is a hip place, but it's not going to be a hip for long if you don't give your young folks an opportunity to do what they want to do. So I love you guys, and I love Decorah. I'm sorry you're making me work so hard, but it's okay. I know you're going to surprise me with those cards. And I want you to know that we have 5 farms in the works just for this year. That's a lot for us. We have 8 already. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 771 acres feeds 154,000 people at full capacity. So right now, instead, we're importing up to almost 90% of our food to Iowa. On the latest numbers, not the latest from Iowa State, 200 people per acre we can feed fruits and vegetables that they would ordinarily eat in a year. Instead, on what we're growing now, we can feed 38, the amount of pork they would grow in a year. So you tell me, you're going to talk right there with the cards. You're going to tell me whether you'd rather have 38 people fed on pork for a year or 200 people fed on fruits and vegetables for a year. Okay? That's the communication. That's how it goes. That's the only language our lawyers speak, the appraisers speak, the gas tank speaks, the rental car speaks, the printer at the office speaks. It's the only language they speak. We can't barter chickens. All right? We can't barter chickens with those guys. So please help us with the cost of doing business. We're not asking for much. And I can assure you, my salary is not coming out of what you donate tonight, even though I hope someday we can build SILT big enough that it does. So I just want to thank you so much for that, giving us that hope. Lyle and all the young people who help us here to give us that hope that when you do something as wild crazy as donate 170 acres, the rest of Iowa can look and say, that's possible? And when we get the Boones on that farm through a process that Kayla chaired on our board, the Farmers Committee, she chaired and created the process for vetting the farmers. And when we find the farmers and they're on there and they're actually making a living, which someday we hope they will, because in the first year that's pretty hard, then people look back and say, wow, that's possible? You guys did this. Your community did that. You made it possible, and we're asking you to help us continue it and continue to inspire Iowa. Thank you very much.
It's a good thing we have a New Yorker that's originally from New York to ask for people to donate, because I think I'm too timid for that. I'm the type of person that keeps my checkbook in my back pocket, So I'm going to get that out later because I need a shirt and I need to re-up my annual donation to SILT too. But speaking of that, we have a couple more drawings to do. So I think we need to bring that hat forward. And then we're going to pull for the 50-50 raffle also. Yeah.
These are insulated bags, guys. It's really
Okay.
nice with the zipper and everything. Are you drawing?
No, I don't want to draw.
She draws it, right?
Gonna let Paul draw. Toby has the raffle tickets. She's bringing them in.
The suspense is killing her, right?
Yeah.
Who's the t-shirt? Steve Cornelius. Hey, where are you?
Woo-hoo. Let's do that. Down there in the end. And
Next one. We're playing favorites over here. Okay. Somebody gets a draw. Gabrielle.
say it.
Here we go. So busted. Oh, we told you not to pull out too.
If anybody wants extras, like, should I sell them now?
You could. Does anybody need a last-minute 50-50 raffle? Is anyone feeling like they should have bought a ticket and didn't? Julie? We got Julie once. Anyone else want a 50-50 raffle that didn't get one yet before we draw?
Should I keep selling and then we'll come back in just a little bit? Because there's over $500 in the pot right now. Okay, I'm gonna keep selling. Is that okay?
Okay, you can keep selling. We're going to give Toby 5 minutes to keep
5
selling.
minutes.
So if you want a 50-50 raffle, you have to raise your hand because I'm out of material and I don't know any good jokes. So. Oh, okay, we're going to do another hat drawing for the Oneota Food Co-op's basket. Susan's going to bring it up here before we... That might work. That might work. Hal Olson wins the Oneota gift basket. All right. Raise your hand. Oh, hooray. All right. And while we're waiting for anyone else that wants 50-50 raffles, I just want to again thank Kristen and Ben for playing music for us. I want to thank Pulpit Rock for hosting us in this beautiful space. I want to thank Decorah Bank and Trust and Oneota Co-op for sponsoring as well. I want to thank all our board members. If you're a board member, raise your hand. I think Laura's here. We know Lyle's here. Paul's in the back. And I really want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight. I have to say that when Lyle and I were tabling at the farmers market and asking people if they knew about SILT, and we were out in community talking to people and wondering what the RSVPs would be like, we had this this is the first time we're going to do this in Decorah, and are people going to come out and show up and ask the questions about this organization and find out what is going on here and support it? And it's really inspiring to me, and it's really inspiring to our board and to Lyle and to everyone who's given so much to this organization to see you all here supporting this in all the ways that you are. I can't answer that question. All right.
Still selling tickets?
Yes, we're still selling tickets. Does anyone else want a ticket? Okay, I think we've...
3 cards. Very nice. 350 and 3 for 10, I think. They're like this.
Okay. We could do you have a short song? Oh, yeah. Okay. There's one more thing that I should tell you, which is a good point by Lyle, which is that there's an app online called the Roundup app. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Oh, I love it. It works with kindergartners. It works with adults. So Lyle reminded me that I should tell everyone about our Roundup app. And that app allows you, when you're making purchases, to just round up to the next even number, and you'll be giving the change to SILT, or to the nonprofit of your choice. So if you sign up for the Roundup app, that would be a great way to also give to SILT when and as you're able. Okay, while we're doing a little bit more raffle, we're going to hear one more song, and then we will announce the raffle winners.
We have the perfect song for this moment, so we just have to we could do a song. It's kind of like musical chairs then. You have until we're done to get some more raffle tickets. Only tonight is all the time you got. I know it's not a lot of time. Only one night will never be enough for you to call this bluff of mine. Do you remember what you said to me? How to be, and time kept slipping by so fast. I still remember how I answered you and finally knew at last. Time never passes in the past. Only one day is all the time we had. I know it's not a lot of time. Just one day could never be enough. No sense in acting tough this time. I still remember what I asked of you, how to be, and time keeps slipping by so fast. Do you remember how I answered you and finally knew at last? Time never passes in the past. Only tonight is all the time we got. Oh, I know it's not a lot of time. Only one night will never be enough. No sense in acting tough this time. Only tonight. Only tonight to make that donation, buy those raffle tickets, support SILT. All right, back to Kayla.
Okay, our raffle has ended, and they're bringing in the tickets. It's like having a one-way mirror out there. What's going on in the back?
Okay, it's a total of $740.
Say it to the mic, Toby.
Oh, hi everybody, thanks. Excuse me. Thank you very much for buying raffle tickets. There is $740 up for grabs in the 50-50. So, we're gonna draw a name right now. Get your tickets out. I have to go get mine.
And we can't be terribly confident in how we counted it out, so you can choose which stack you want.
Okay. Do we have the bucket to draw from? Let's have Jesse come up and draw. Jesse, would you like to draw? All right, the moment of truth.
I don't know if that's fair. He's in the drawing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is totally fair. I got a horse in this race.
Okay, the number is 7806145. That's 7806145. 7806145. They might not be in here right now. We're going to draw again. All right. Let's see. We got to thank Peter Goodman for doing all our technical support here with the videoing. And I think maybe he should also draw our next number. Yeah. All right. Okay. 7806141. Yeah, those are remarkably close together. 7806141. I feel like we have an incredibly lucky person who has like a roll of tickets right now. Tell them to go buy a lottery ticket. Is that you? All right, it's Ross. Woo woo. Congrats. All right. You've got both of them. Very lucky. Huh. Ross wants to donate it back to SILT. Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, you've all been incredibly generous, and it's inspiring when you're on a board of an organization, when you're part of an organization that you believe so deeply in, to see a community come out in full force the way you have and show up and show that you want this to happen as much as we all do. So, we started this night with gratitude, and I think that we have so much gratitude for you, and it's just a pleasure to see the gratitude in the room that we have for each other and the work that everyone has done to make tonight possible. So thank you so much for coming, and cheers to SILT. And we're going to have a little bit more music to serenade us from Egan and Hippen.